I speak today not as a politician, but as a man who has watched the future of Africa erode like soil carried away by wind. I have seen classrooms with no windows, hospitals with no medicine, and young men who learned how to hold a weapon before they learned how to hold their conscience. My name is Ibrahim Traoré. I serve as president of Burkina Faso, but long before titles, I was a son of this land, shaped by its silences, its prayers, and its wounds. Across our continent, Christianity arrived long before ministries and budgets. Churches built schools when there were no governments to fund them. They opened clinics when there were no systems to sustain them. They taught children not only how to read books, but how to read their own hearts. In villages where nothing else endured, the church remained. In seasons of hunger and war, it fed both body and spirit. This is not nostalgia, it is memory, and memory carries truth. Africa is not poor because it lacks resources. We are poor because we have lost our moral center. We extract minerals but neglect conscience. We teach skills but forget meaning. We train minds but leave souls unattended. In that vacuum, corruption becomes normal, violence becomes acceptable, and power becomes an addiction rather than a responsibility. I have stood with Muslim elders who pray for peace 5 times a day. I have listened to Christian mothers who ask not for wealth, but for their children to grow up good. I have spoken with young people who do not reject God, but who have never been shown why faith matters when life is cruel. In the Sahel, faith is not a theory, it is often the last remaining shelter. The world likes simple explanations for African suffering. They speak of economics, geopolitics, or climate. All of that matters. But something deeper has been eroded. We have slowly accepted the idea that education can be neutral, that schools can form intelligent citizens without forming moral beings. I no longer believe this is true. Jesus Christ does not belong to Europe. He does not belong to America. He belongs to truth. He belongs to conscience. He belongs wherever human dignity is under threat. On the cross, he did not teach domination. He taught sacrifice. He did not teach revenge. He taught forgiveness. He did not teach how to rule others. He taught how to rule oneself. Today, I look at Africa's children and I ask myself what we are offering them as an inner compass. What reminds them that life has meaning beyond money and power? What teaches them that authority exists to serve, not to crush? And so I ask this quietly but firmly to Africa, to the Sahel, to Christians, to Muslims, and to the world watching us from afar. If the image of Jesus on the cross has shaped conscience wherever it has been taken seriously, why should Africa be denied that reminder in its schools? If this question speaks to you, reflect on it with me, and if you wish, share your thoughts and stay with this conversation. I did not arrive at this decision in a moment of triumph. I arrived at it in moments of shame. Shame at how easily power seduces. Shame at how quickly ideals decay once authority feels permanent. Shame at how often we build schools that sharpen intelligence while dulling conscience. When I look honestly at our educational systems, I do not see failure in mathematics or science. I see success there. Our children can calculate, code, analyze, and memorize. But too many of them leave school without learning how to govern their desires, restrain their anger, or carry responsibility when no one is watching. We educate the mind, but we leave the soul unemployed. A school without God does not produce neutral citizens. It produces unfinished human beings. When there is no higher reference point, morality becomes negotiable. Right and wrong become flexible. Power becomes the final judge. And when power is the final judge, the weakest always lose. I have watched bright young men enter public service with clean hands and leave it with empty eyes. Not because they were stupid, but because they were never taught that conscience must stand above opportunity. Corruption does not begin with greed. It begins with silence inside the heart. Jesus Christ confronts that silence, not with fear, but with truth. When a child looks at the cross, they are not being taught theology. They are being reminded that life has moral weight, that actions have consequences. That suffering is not meaningless when it is carried with love. The cross teaches without shouting. It corrects without humiliating. Some ask why schools should carry any spiritual symbol at all. My answer is simple. Because education is never empty. If we do not place something at the center, something else will take its place. And too often what replaces God is money, ideology, or violence. Jesus did not teach us how to dominate others. He taught us how to sacrifice for them. That lesson is not dangerous. It is desperately missing. In Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Niger, I have seen what happens when young men grow up with no inner break, when anger becomes identity, when weapons offer meaning because nothing else does. We respond with security operations, with budgets, with speeches. but we rarely ask what formed the conscience of the child before he became the fighter. I place Jesus in schools not to create believers by force, but to create human beings with limits. Limits to power, limits to cruelty, limits to pride. A child who learns that even God chose humility will think twice before abusing authority. A child who learns that truth was crucified will understand that justice is rarely popular, but always necessary. This decision is not against Muslims. I say this with full clarity. Islam also teaches accountability before God, restraint of ego, and reverence for life. Many Muslim parents I have spoken to understand this better than foreign commentators who speak of Africa as if it were a laboratory. This decision is not against secular people. It is against moral emptiness, against the idea that values can survive without roots. I am not pretending this will solve everything. It will not end poverty. It will not end conflict overnight, but it restores a reference point. It restores a quiet voice in the room that asks, not what can I get away with, but who am I becoming? And that question, more than any policy, determines the future of a nation. If this path has a cost, I am prepared to pay it, because a future without conscience is far more expensive. I place Jesus Christ in schools not to glorify suffering, but to honor love that survives suffering. The cross is not a celebration of pain. It is a refusal to let pain have the final word. When a child sees Jesus on the cross, they are not being told to be weak. They are being shown the most radical form of strength the world has ever known. Strength that refuses hatred even when hatred feels justified. Strength that speaks truth without violence and justice without revenge. Jesus on the cross represents truth that does not negotiate itself to remain comfortable. He represents justice that does not require a weapon. He represents power that kneels rather than crushes. This is not mythology. This is moral architecture. I am aware that many people see only a tortured body when they look at the cross. I see something else. I see authority that refuses to save itself at the cost of others. I see leadership that accepts personal loss rather than collective corruption. When Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he is not offering a slogan. He is offering a standard, a way of walking that demands humility, a truth that survives pressure, a life that is not reduced to survival alone. Africa has been taught how to stand tall in resistance, but not always how to bow before truth. A continent that wishes to stand upright must first learn where to kneel, not before foreign powers, not before money, but before conscience. In my conversations with elders, both Muslim and Christian, I hear the same fear spoken differently, that children are growing faster than their wisdom, that technology is advancing faster than restraint, that power is arriving before responsibility. Jesus Christ answers that imbalance, not by force, but by example. He shows that the highest authority is self-mastery, that the strongest man is the one who forgives when he could destroy, that leadership without love eventually devours itself. I do not ask Muslim children to abandon their faith. I do not ask Christian children to feel superior. I ask all children to encounter a moral witness who chose service over domination. Islam honors Jesus as a prophet. Christianity honors him as the Son. Both recognize his moral gravity. The cross in a classroom does not speak loudly. It does not argue. It does not shame. It simply remains, asking a question no exam can ask. What will you do with power when it is placed in your hands? I believe Africa needs that question asked every day before the first lesson begins. If this meaning is misunderstood, then the symbol becomes empty. But if it is understood, even quietly, it can shape generations more deeply than laws ever could. They say I am imposing religion. They say I am crossing a line between faith and state. They say I am turning schools into places of worship. I listen to these words carefully because fear often hides inside sophisticated language. I am not imposing prayer. I am not demanding belief. I am not ranking citizens by faith. I am doing something far simpler and far more difficult. I am protecting the inner life of our children. The cross is not an idol. Christianity does not worship wood or metal. The cross is not a god. It is a memory, a silent reminder that human life has value beyond utility, that the strongest authority once chose obedience to truth over survival. No child will be forced to kneel. No child will be examined on doctrine. No child will be punished for disbelief. But every child will grow up with a daily reminder that power must answer to conscience. Those who accuse me of coercion often defend other forms of influence without hesitation. They accept the quiet imposition of consumerism. They tolerate the daily worship of money. They excuse ideologies that teach children their worth depends on success, dominance, or pleasure. These are also beliefs. They are simply unnamed. There is no such thing as a neutral school. There is only a school shaped by values it admits or values it hides. Some fear that placing the cross excludes Muslims. I reject this fear completely. Islam teaches accountability before God. It teaches restraint of ego. It teaches reverence for life. Many Muslim parents understand that the moral collapse of youth is a greater danger than any symbol on a wall. I have spoken with imams who told me quietly that they fear a generation raised without awe, without humility, without limits. They know that when God disappears from education, violence does not disappear. It reorganizes itself. Others say this decision will isolate Africa internationally, that donors will criticize, that institutions will object. I ask them a simple question. When did moral clarity ever receive permission from the world? Africa has spent too long adjusting its soul to be acceptable to others. We have signed agreements that ignored our reality. We have copied models that did not fit our wounds. We have been told that development requires forgetting God, and still, our suffering continues. I am not hostile to the world. I speak to it openly. But I refuse to trade the conscience of our children for approval. What I am doing is not radical, it is restorative. I am restoring a moral reference point that existed long before modern politics arrived on our continent. A reference point that taught forgiveness when revenge was easier, discipline when chaos was tempting, service when power was intoxicating. If someone is offended by the reminder that human dignity is sacred, I cannot remove that reminder without removing the dignity itself. This decision does not divide us. Moral emptiness divides us. This decision does not threaten freedom. Freedom without conscience destroys itself. I accept criticism, I accept misunderstanding, I accept the cost, but I will not accept silence when the soul of Africa is at stake. Standing with Jesus Christ has never been the easy road. It never was, and it never will be. If it were easy, it would not transform anyone. I know what awaits this decision. I know there will be international criticism, carefully worded and politely delivered. I know there will be political pressure disguised as concern. I know there will be media narratives that reduce this to provocation, or worse, to ignorance. I am not naive about the world I am speaking into, but I have learned something in leadership. Silence is also a choice, and it has a cost. When leaders remain quiet to preserve comfort, children pay the price. When governments avoid moral questions to avoid controversy, societies drift without anchor. The gospel itself warns us of this path. Jesus said that if the world hates you, remember that it hated him first. Not because he was violent, but because he refused to lie. Not because he sought power, but because he exposed it. Truth has always unsettled systems built on convenience. Africa has been pressured before to soften its convictions. We have been told that progress requires forgetting God, that stability requires moral neutrality, that unity requires spiritual silence. We followed this advice in many places, and yet our prisons are full, our graves are crowded, and our youth are restless. There is a cost to obedience, there is also a cost to compromise. The difference is who pays it. I am prepared to pay this cost personally. As president, I know this decision will be used against me. It will be quoted out of context. It will be framed as authoritarian. It may close doors that were already half closed. But I did not enter leadership to protect doors. I entered to protect people. Africa cannot sell its soul to buy the world's approval. A continent that trades its conscience for silence will eventually lose both. I say this also to my fellow leaders in the Sahel. We carry heavy burdens. We negotiate with weapons at our borders and hunger in our villages. We are told to be pragmatic, to delay moral questions until stability arrives. But stability without moral foundation is only a pause before collapse. Jesus did not choose safety, he chose truth. He did not choose popularity, he chose obedience. That choice cost him everything, and it gave the world its conscience. If leadership costs me comfort, I accept it. If it costs me reputation, I accept it. If it costs me power, I accept it. Because power without moral direction is not leadership. It is administration of decay. I ask God for strength, not success. For clarity, not applause. For courage, not convenience. And I ask Jesus Christ to guard Burkina Faso, to guard Africa, and to guard my own heart from pride, because no leader is immune to the temptation he condemns. If this path is narrow, let it be narrow. Wide roads have not led us to peace. When a child grows up with a moral reference point, something quiet but firm takes shape inside them. It is not fear, it is orientation. They learn that not everything possible is permissible, and not everything profitable is right. This is the beginning of freedom, not its enemy. A cross in a classroom does not lecture, it watches. It reminds a child that life is more than competition, that strength includes restraint, that dignity does not come from dominating others. Over time, this produces something rare and fragile. Inner discipline. Inner discipline is what Africa has been denied for generations. We have been taught external control, imposed order, and borrowed systems. But when the policeman leaves, when the donor withdraws, when the camera turns away, what remains is the conscience of the individual. Without that, no institution survives. Children who learn responsibility before power become adults who fear abusing authority. Children who learn reverence for life hesitate before destroying it. Children who learn that even God-accepted limits will not believe themselves above limits. This is not theory. We have seen it wherever moral formation was taken seriously. Societies with shared ethical references place boundaries on power. Leaders know they will be judged not only by law, but by conscience. Citizens understand that freedom is not the absence of restraint, but the presence of responsibility. The cross teaches that authority exists to serve. That lesson alone could save Africa decades of suffering. Our continent has bled not only from poverty, but from leaders who confuse power with entitlement. A shared moral language restrains that confusion. Some fear this will divide us. I believe it can unite us. Muslims, Christians, and even those who claim no faith all benefit from a society where life is respected, corruption is shamed, and power is questioned. These values do not weaken nations. They stabilize them. A cross in a school does not manufacture believers. It forms witnesses to conscience. It does not replace parents, mosques, or churches. It supports them. It reminds the child, before they enter the noise of the world, that their life has weight and meaning. I have seen young men who found no meaning until violence gave them one. I have seen young women who learned too late that dignity cannot be purchased. If a silent symbol can interrupt that tragedy even once, it is worth more than 1,000 speeches. This is what I hope to bring to Africa. Not a theocracy, not uniform belief, but a shared moral floor beneath our disagreements. A place where children learn that before they become anything else, they must become human. If this vision resonates with you, stay with me. There is still more to say. Africa will not be saved by bullets. It will not be saved by money. It will not be saved by conferences, resolutions, or borrowed blueprints. Africa will be saved only when we recover the courage to ask who we are becoming, not just what we are building. I speak now to Christians across the world. Do not hear this message as triumph. Hear it as burden. The cross is not a symbol of domination. It is a demand for humility. If we place it in our schools but remove it from our conduct, it condemns us rather than redeems us. I speak to Muslims, my brothers and sisters. This decision is not against you. It is for the child who must learn that power answers to God, not appetite. Islam knows this truth deeply. Accountability before the Almighty is not foreign to you. Walk with us in protecting the moral core of the next generation. I speak to leaders of the Sahel. We cannot keep outsourcing our conscience while pretending to govern. Security without moral formation is temporary. Order without meaning collapses. If we do not shape the inner life of our people, someone else will, and not with mercy. I speak to the world, especially to those watching from the United States and the United Kingdom. You know this story. You have seen societies where material success outpaced moral restraint. You have watched trust dissolve, families fracture, and truth become negotiable. Africa does not want to repeat that path. We want to learn from it. I do not claim Jesus Christ as a political tool. I kneel before him as a moral judge. His cross reminds me that leadership is measured by sacrifice, not control. That authority exists to serve the weakest, not protect the strongest. I ask Jesus Christ to bless Burkina Faso, to protect our children from despair, to restrain our leaders from pride, to heal wounds that no policy can reach. I ask him to bless Africa, to give us patience where anger tempts us, wisdom where power seduces us, unity where fear divides us. And I ask him to bless me not with longevity but with fidelity, not with applause but with courage, not with success but with truth. If this message has spoken to you, I ask you to reflect, to comment, to share your thoughts, and to remain part of this conversation. Not because I seek agreement, but because silence is no longer an option. Every day I wake up and I must choose again. There is no final victory, only vigilance or surrender.